We're going to be reacting to a video from More Perfect Union about how Uber is robbing their drivers.
Uber and Lyft prices are out of control. Just the other day, I needed a ride from Denver Airport. $90, $87.95 to be exact, for a 22-mile ride at 10 a.m. on a Monday.
Okay, so right off the bat, she's saying she spent $87.95 for a 20-mile ride. So that means that ride costs her $4.39 per mile. All right, keep that number in mind. It's gonna be very important.
Is that him? It got me thinking. Does Uber actually want me to believe that this ride is worth $90? Because as much as I don't want to pay $90 for a 22-mile ride, if that money—
I made a mistake. It was $22. All right, so we want to make sure we're as accurate as possible. So $87.95. She said 20, but it's 22. So $3.99 per mile.
22-mile ride. If that money is going to the driver, I can live with that.
This is in Colorado.
I yesterday came in from the airport and the app charged me $90.
Yes.
$90. How
Yes.
much of that do you think is going to the driver?
Going to the driver, like $25 the most.
All right, he said $25 the most out of that $90 is going to the driver. Let's see if that feels normal. All right. So she said $25. And we're going to divide that by a 22-mile ride. So that gives us an average earning of $1.13 per mile. So as a rideshare driver, I've been doing this for about 3 years, going on 3 years in October. I guess it's been 3 years. I would say between 80 cents and $1.20, that range is usually what I get when I'm doing rideshare. So this looks accurate, right? So his numbers doesn't seem far-fetched. So it looks like she's paying about $90 for her ride, and he's only getting about 20. But what does that work out to from a percentage standpoint?
You know how much a passenger pays for each trip?
Company, they don't tell us. They try to hiding with that. Yes, they try to hiding everything.
So it seems the majority of my money is not going into my driver's pocket. And my driver has no knowledge of the exorbitant price I'm paying or how much of that the company is taking. And we're all just okay with that.
Okay, so I do want to address this point. There is a way for drivers to see how much passengers are making, like the total breakdown, but you can't see it before you make a decision on the ride, right? So this is a ride that I've done in the past. The upfront fare was $12.98, but in the app, you're only seeing the upfront fare. You're not seeing what Uber is actually charging the passenger unless you go here. And the only way you get here is if you go on a desktop and you sign into the Uber website, and then you can pull up all your rides. So you really do have to dig deep for it. All right, so the customer price was $22.92. Shows you the third-party fees, $1.63 for booking, 21 cents for the region or city fee. So my city charges Uber 21 cents for every single ride. I don't know why they do that. And then it says my earnings was $12.98. And of the $12.98 that I made, Uber took $8.10. Right? So we can run math on that, right? What percent is 12 of 22.92? That's 52%. I only got paid 52% of what the passenger paid, and the rest went to Uber and city fees, taxes, whatever they have to do. But I don't want to make it seem like I'm only cherry picking that one ride. So here's another ride, right? And this one kind of swings the other way. This one, the fare was $36.03. The fare was actually $11. There was a $21 surge on top of that, and then the Uber X priority, and then I got tipped $4.99. So my earnings was $41.02. The customer paid $24.99. So that means I earned more than the customer paid, but that's because of the surge and the tip. So about $25 came from surge tip, and then the customer paid $24 into the rest. So booking fee $3.55, the region fee doesn't change. My earnings was $41. And Uber service fee is negative $14.80. So that means Uber paid me on top of the customer's pay $14.80. And it's important to highlight that because Uber isn't profitable on every trip. Now, this is like peak. This is probably on a Saturday, the height of busyness, which is really the only time I ever go on Uber, because usually I do Lyft. I find Lyft to be more consistent in my market, but sometimes Lyft has awesome surges. So only in moments where there are really high surges will Uber be losing money. But it is important and fair for me to acknowledge that this is a scenario in which Uber did lose some money. You know, I got over 100% of the payment.
Do you drive for Uber and Lyft?
I do. I drive full time. I drive over 60 hours a week. I do this pretty much every single day.
Does that pay the bills? Is it a little less, or how does that pan out?
So over time, the money that we take as Uber and Lyft drivers has gradually been going down, and it's at its worst right now.
Okay, so I do want to jump into that claim. Show me the average that ride share drivers make per mile for the last 10 years, year over year. The average amount that rideshare drivers make per mile has been steadily decreasing over the past 10 years. In 2013, the average rideshare driver made $1.18 per mile. In 2023, the average rideshare driver makes 0.82 cents per mile. So this is actually this lines up with what I see in my market. Even though I make these videos of how I'm making X amount of money per week, I'm still having to put in hours to get there. If I know only New Yorkers make this much, but even on my rate card, I can pull up my rate card, Lyft rate card for Charleston. Oh, here it is. All right, so let's see if we can zoom in here. Base fare, cost per mile. It says 98. This is old though, so this is no longer even like in play since we've gone to upfront fare. But you can see like it's less than what the average said it before, and this is old. This isn't even accurate to what drivers are getting paid now. So his claim that, you know, drivers are making less over time, it seems to be accurate. 2013, you can see like the scale, how it's going down, down, down. As you can see, the average rideshare driver earnings per mile has decreased by 31% since 2013. There are a number of factors that have contributed to this decrease, including increased competition. The rideshare industry has become increasingly competitive in recent years, with new companies entering the market. To me, I don't understand how that would lower pay. It should improve it, if anything. This has led to lower fares for passengers. Okay, so that's what it is. This has led to lower fares for passengers, which in turn point downward pressure on driver earnings. Okay, I'd never realized that. So the rising costs, the cost of driving a rideshare vehicle has also been increasing in recent years due to factors such as fuel prices and vehicle maintenance costs. This has further eroded driver earnings. That's a fair point. Changes in pay structure. Some rideshare companies have changed their pay structure in recent years in ways that have made it more difficult for drivers to earn a good living. This is true, and I've made a video about this. For example, some companies have switched to a distance-based pay model, which pays drivers based off of the distance they drive, regardless of the time it takes to complete a trip. That is also true. This can be a disadvantage to drivers who live in areas with heavy traffic, as they spend more time driving than they do picking up and dropping off passengers. I refuse to drive during traffic time for this reason. I have learned very quickly that if you're stuck in traffic, you're not making money. And I didn't know that the model was different before. Despite these challenges, many rideshare drivers still enjoy the flexibility and the independence of the job. So I'm curious, what system did Uber use to calculate pay before switching to pay per mile? Before switching to a pay per mile system, Uber used a combination of factors to calculate driver pay, including time, distance, and surge pricing. The exact formula was not publicly disclosed, but it was generally understood that drivers were paid a base fare plus an additional amount for each minute and mile driven. I'm pretty sure that's how it works today, but I assume that the rates were better before. Surge pricing was a factor, with fares being automatically increased during periods of high demand. The pay per mile system was introduced in 2019. See, that's about the time I started driving, so I didn't even know there was a different system before. Introduced in 2019 as a way to make Uber's pay structure more transparent and predictable for drivers. More transparent, what a lie. Under this system, drivers are paid a fixed amount per mile driven, regardless of the time it takes them to complete a trip. Surge pricing is still in effect, but it's now applied on a per mile basis rather than a per minute basis. I didn't know that. That's huge. It should have been both. That's a huge difference. Uber's pay per mile system has been met with mixed reactions from drivers. Some drivers appreciate the transparency and predictability of the new system, while others argue that it leads to a decrease in overall earnings. Uber has defended the new system, arguing that it's fairer and more sustainable way to compensate drivers. I remember the switch over to like upfront pay. There were like drivers who were happy that they could see ahead of time, and there were other drivers who thought it was just like masqueraded as a pay decrease. Here's a table of the old and new pay systems. So the old pay system, new pay system, time base fare plus additional amount per minute. New pay system not a factor. That I don't know. I haven't seen that. Maybe upfront pay it's become less of a factor. I wouldn't say it's not a factor. It's much less of a factor. Distance base fare plus additional amount per mile, fixed amount per mile. Okay, that seems accurate. Surge pricing automatically increases fares during periods of high demand. Applied on I would, oh man. If surge pricing was applied on a per mile basis, it would then make it worth taking long rides. And like, as you guys have seen, it's currently not worth taking long rides, right? All the rideshare drivers pretty much agree with that. I do think there are certain times of the day where I might do a long ride, but from a mileage perspective, it usually just doesn't add up.
I remember when we started driving for Uber and Lyft, per our contract, they were supposed to only take 25%, and then we get 75% of the ride. But that's not the case anymore. They take, I'd say, at least 60% of our fare right now.
Okay, I want to go and see how true this is, right? It says drivers who sign up for UberX in San Francisco on or after September 2 will fork over an unprecedented 25% of their earnings to Uber. Okay, so, I mean, all right, so AI got it wrong. That's the highest ever UberX commission, which has always been 20% or less. So it actually used to average out to be about 20% or less. And it's just the latest way Uber is shaving off more and more drivers. And this was back in 2014. This article is more than 9 years old. So there you have it. His claim is correct. This was long before I started driving. And his claim of how much Uber is taking is pretty accurate.
And why do you think these rideshare companies keep this information from you guys and from the customers? Why do you think they hide it?
I think they hide it because we know how much they're charging these passengers, and how much, if we knew any more than we already know, what we can demand for.
I wanted to follow up on this theory and find out if Uber really takes 60% of its drivers' fares, like Eric says.
The best way to think about this research is an exploration of how we can give drivers and organizers the data and the tools that they need to investigate their working conditions. So basically what our research team did was we built a software tool, which is called FairFare. And the FairFare tool does kind of what the name implies. It tries to tell drivers if their fare, like how much they're paid, was fair. The most interesting trend for us and for our community partners was around the difference in take rates for surge versus non-surge rides. Take rate basically refers to how much the platform takes from every customer fare.
So I'm a little biased here. I would have preferred if the take rate was the percentage that the platform takes from the driver. It would have been a larger percentage. It would have looked more disgusting, but that's because I'm biased and I'm a driver. I think that with take rate being a percentage of what the customer pays, maybe this video will have a more widespread audience. Like this video already has almost 500,000 views. It'll probably hit it by the end of this week. It came out last week. So they did a great job of targeting both customers and drivers. There are obviously going to be more customers on Uber and Lyft than there will be drivers. So this video is becoming part of a larger conversation that addresses the frustration between both passengers and drivers. And it's aiming all of the firepower at Uber. And I think they're doing a very great job of that. So she's going to give 3 reasons to why she thinks Uber is not releasing that data. And I'm going to address each of them. This is reason 1.
In general, we think that there may be 3 possible reasons why companies don't want to be transparent. One reason may be, it's a lot of work to release data sets publicly. It takes a lot of labor, it costs a lot of money. Another reason is that, maybe...
So she's right. It does take a lot of work. It does probably takes a lot of money. You have to create the systems that put that data out. But Uber already had this, right? When Uber launched, they used to tell us Let's look it up. When did Uber stop sharing with drivers how much customers were paying? Uber has a history of changing how it shares fare information with its drivers. In July 2021, the company was caught hiding the full fare amount from drivers in some markets. The following month, Uber announced that it would start showing drivers the full fare charged to customers. However, in late 2022, Uber again stopped sharing the full amount with drivers. The exact date on which Uber stopped sharing the full fare amount with drivers is not publicly known. However, it is believed to have happened sometime in the late summer of 2022. I started driving with Uber for the first time in 2023 because I was actually banned from their account for so long. Not even banned. I had something on my MVR report that wouldn't like take off, and I couldn't use it. I eventually got it taken off, and now it can. So I don't know anything about Uber's history before 2023. The company has not provided a reason for this change, but is likely due to the desire to maintain control over pricing and prevent drivers from cherry picking fares. Uber's decision to stop sharing the full fare amount with drivers has been met with criticism from some drivers and customer advocates. They argue that the lack of transparency makes it difficult for drivers to make informed decisions about which fares to accept, and that it could lead drivers to being underpaid, which that checks off. That does check off. Uber has defended its decision, arguing that it's necessary to protect its pricing algorithms and ensure that drivers are not confused by multiple fare amounts. Well, I mean, you wouldn't have to confuse them if pricing was consistent. It doesn't make any sense. The company also points out that drivers can still see the estimated fare before accepting a ride. The debate over whether Uber should share the full fare amount with drivers is likely to continue, and it's continuing right now. However, for now, drivers will need to rely on other sources for information, such as third-party apps, to get better senses of how much customers are paying. All right, so reason one, so we're seeing that they used to collect that data, they used to put out that data, and then they stopped. So we know that reason one is debunked. That can't be right. That can't be accurate. So let's see what she says for reason two.
Publicly, it takes a lot of labor, it costs a lot of money. Another reason is that, maybe companies don't actually store this information. And then a third reason would—
All right, so number two, we debunked number two already with number one. They had the information. We know they had the information because they were showing us the information. Let's take a look at the third reason she claims as to why these companies don't want to share data with us.
Which seems to be, maybe companies don't actually store this information. And then a third reason, which seems to be, most common amongst organizers, and definitely a very plausible reason, is that companies don't want to release this information because it would invite inquiry into how they're operating. Information really is power.
So that sounds closer to the real answer. I think the real answer is that they don't want drivers to know. It's easier to take advantage of drivers if they're ignorant. And I hate leaning on the negativity side of that. But Uber and Lyft, I would say Uber more than Lyft, but both of these companies have shown us that they will make decisions that aren't in favor to drivers, and they'll do it in very sneaky ways. All right, so I actually have this is, if you want to do the study, I'm gonna put this in chat as well. This is where you would go, and you can sign up for updates, and you can join the study. I'm gonna actually join the study. I'm not gonna do it here because I don't want to waste your guys' time. But if you want to contribute to this research that's going to be showing us how much customers are paying, how much drivers are receiving, and how much Uber is taking from both of us, make sure you do this study. I will say it's going to ask you to connect to your Uber account. So if you have fears about like security concerns, like if this, for example, they could get hacked and your data is now in the wind, and we're talking about money here, like your accounts and things like that, this could be like a point of access. So be careful. I just want to give that disclaimer before I tell you to do this. I don't want you guys to hold me responsible if they get hacked. But because Lyft is actually my primary income driver, I feel comfortable given like signing into their platform with my Uber account, and I'll do. And they use Uber API. So Uber says, hey, people, you can have access to some of these APIs. We'll make them as safe as possible. So it's not uncommon, but again, do it at your own risk. So I'm not going to play the entire video. I want you guys to go and support this video. It'll help the video get out there. Go like this video. I'll drop it in chat right now, but you can check it out later. We'll move on to the next topic.